I'll introduce our panelists, and I just want to say, so often we watch documentaries or news reports or we read about something, and we wish that we could talk to the person leading the fight. And so this is our opportunity to do just that with our three amazing guests who flew in very, very early yesterday from Nova Scotia to join us here to have this conversation. And so I'm going to just briefly introduce um, each of our guests, and I will limit my own prerogative as the moderator, and try to hold back my questions to make sure that we have plenty of time for folks in the audience to share their questions. So just very briefly, have we awkwardly pushed all of the chairs? Okay. um, so I'll just join folks at the table, but um, just very briefly so that you get to hear about some of a little bit about these incredible women, and then we'll open up the discussion. So first, Louise, who you had a chance to see first up in the documentary, she's a grassroots activist and founder of SEED, the Talent to End Environmental Injustice Society. SEED is a Black-led nonprofit and direct grassroots response to the siting of a landfill near Shelburne's African Nova Scotian and working poor community. It is a volunteer effort to address issues of environmental racism, as you saw. Dorene Bernard is a Mi'kmaq grassroots grandmother from the pardon me for this from the Sipik Nakatik band in Mi'kmaqi, and she is a water protector, water walker, and survivor of the Shubenacadie Indian Residential School. She has a master's of social work and worked in Mi'kmaq child welfare for 15 years and community support for residential school survivors over the past 10 years. And finally, we have Michelle Francis Denny. Michelle, who comes from Pictou Landing First Nation, a small Mi'kmaq community in Nova Scotia. She considers herself a lifelong learner with a passion for Indigenous rights and environmental justice. And she most recently completed her MBA in Indigenous Business Leadership with Simon Fraser University in British Columbia and is the former community liaison for the Boat Harbor Remediation Project. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to HKS to our three and Michelle. So as I said, so I have the benefit of being able to ask a first question to our guests, and to Ian as well, who can chime in at the end, and then after that, after we hear from them, we'll open it up for audience questions. So one thing that struck me in watching the documentary was something that two of you said, actually, both Louise and Michelle, I believe, said we shouldn't have to fight for this. Something as elementary, as simple, as basic, as fundamental as water, and yet you have waged years long struggles, your communities have waged decades long struggles, um for 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 just something as simple and yet as essential to life as clean water. So I wanted to just hear a little bit, if you could kind of reflect on how do you mobilize, reflect on your work in mobilizing communities to take environmental racism seriously. And sort of as you do that, would love for you to share with us any updates on what has um, been going on, what has happened since what we saw in the documentary. I know it's a big question. You have so many years of experience to share with us, but just any initial reflections that you have of sort of how do you get just the Justin Trudeau's to care? How do you get our neighbors to care? How do we mobilize people around this issue of environmental justice? What has that looked like for you? And updates that we have since this documentary filmed. So why don't we start with Michelle?
Okay, and this is on. Can you hear me? It's on. Um, yeah, so like as I was watching back the film, I haven't watched the film even when it was on Netflix. The last time I watched the film was at the Toronto International Film Festival. And I don't really know. So just looking back and reflecting upon, in the moment and that time, I think working 5 years for the Boat Harbor Remediation Project and it being my own community and be it my very close connection with my grandfather being chief at the time, it was it was very heavy lifting um, to mobilize where decades and years of what I mentioned in the film Boat Harbor Warriors, my aunts and my cousins and people before me that had tried so desperately to mobilize. And all of a sudden we were in this space, thankfully for Ian and Elliot for coming in, helping to elevate our voices and elevating our cause and telling our stories on this, international forum, um, that we were able to draw attention and build allies and for something that stayed hidden for so many years in our own county, and for people just like our neighbors just realizing, oh wow, I never really, we just thought it was that stinky place down the road that I tell my kids not to go, and things like that around the county. So when we're talking about mobilizing, um the effort really came from our ancestors and the people, and it just happens to grow and it grows and it grows, and it got to the point where we felt strong enough where we're going to finally take this stand. But it was built on the shoulders of our ancestors, of course. So, and actually my updates are and because I know what I know now and reflecting back on the film, I'm like, oh my goodness, there's just so many things that are so interconnected between all of our stories when it comes to politics and legislation. And the biggest update I can share with you that I just recently became aware of was an amendment to the Boat Harbor Act. So just in April of 2022, um, there was an amendment added to the Boat Harbor Act that I don't believe our community was consulted on. Because as you saw in the film in 2014, when we were at the protest site, this is when our leadership had negotiated this act and it was going to take place. So I just stumbled across something, and I read that there was an amendment, and um, it has to do with, this was added to the act. No action can be taken against the province. So of course, since Premier McNeil has retired and the government changes, of course, there is this, now that the film has died down and there's this space, it seems to be that this silently slipped through. And of course, it talks about the importance of the legislation protecting the environment, but it ever so um, boldly states, no, we're protecting ourselves. So this is something that has just, evoked a fire in me. And I'm like, and then we had a community meeting the other day. There's another update. I actually missed it. It was yesterday. And I asked if I could call into the community meeting because um, I no longer work for the Boat Harbor Remediation Project. I worked for 5 years, and I talk a little bit about the healing journey. So I've been on my own healing journey, and very much you can't heal in the place that made you sick. So I was very unwell being in this space, being so closely associated to the turmoil and the trauma and fighting the government and trying so desperately to have our voices heard. But yeah, in the end, my update, I guess, on that is that the community had read this document that was put together by lawyers that really acknowledged all the red flags that I felt when I was in that position. And as I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, I was like, yes, yes. I said, so now the whole community gets to see this and document. And they had a meeting on it. And they gave basically, no surprise, three choices. Choice number one was that the remediation method was to bury the contaminants on site. Yes, we're going to clean it up. However, we're going to put in these geotubes, we're going to bury it on site, and we're going to leave it out on site. But you guys will get jobs. You'll maintain it for the rest. And you talk about, I believe it was somebody else had said, I wrote it down. I can't find it. So the environmental burden still would stay with us, right? And I think Dorene had mentioned that. So, and that's why I walked away from the project, because I didn't believe that's still environmental racism. That still impacts us. That still leaves the burden with us. So I made the choice to walk away from the project, but not walk away from my community. Like I live there and I'm still here, and we're in to what I realize now is that, yeah, we're continuing to fight because that's the choice. Now they say, well, if you don't accept that the waste management, the waste treatment, you don't accept that we're going to bury it on site, then maybe it won't happen at all. Okay, that's a tough pill to swallow because we go back to legislation, and now that we see there's an amendment, so excuse my language, but there's times when you can just wipe your ass with legislation. It just appeases, the groups at the time, and then they go and amend it. So the other option was, okay, then we don't remediate it. We could just say no. We can just say, you know what, we close down the mill, and that's good enough. And then the third option that our community proposed was like, well, you're really backing us into a corner. So we're like, okay, well, is there a way that we could temporarily like remediate, dredge, do everything that we need to do, contain it, and then eventually figure out a new technology or something that would, rid us of this, contaminated site. And so those are my updates. Right now, I can strongly say that the community has voted no. That they're standing strong together, and they're saying we don't want that containment site here. So the fight continues.
It's my turn. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for having us. Thank you, Lee. The question about mobilizing the community. First of all, I think I have to explain to you who we are as a community in Nova Scotia. African Nova Scotian people came to Nova Scotia as indentured servants or slaves, or they came free. So keeping that in mind, when you think about mobilizing somebody who feels they do not have a voice, who cannot speak up when they are being discriminated against or they're being basically killed by environmental racism, to mobilize somebody in the Black community was something that took a lot of strength from me to say, it's okay. Like, you can say this is not okay. And we got your back, but we have to stand together to do it. So it wasn't easy. So I decided I would start a group because people were coming to me and complaining about people dying. Why is all this cancer in our community? What is this? What is this? And I sat there, I watched the film, like Michelle said she hadn't watched it for a while. I hadn't watched the film either for a while because I found it very emotional. And I thought, how many people have passed away in my community with cancer since this film has been made? And I count 11 people died of cancer. 4 people recently diagnosed with cancer, and 2 with multiple myeloma, and myself with the markers of multiple myeloma. So that's a very short period of time. So the fight is worth it for me. The updates, well, Elliot Page had donated a fair amount of money, $25,000 for us to put in a community well. We fought with the town council to put the well in our community on a piece of donated property, a park that was donated by somebody in the community. We fought and we fought and we fought and explained. We did water tests. We took all that stuff to them. They said they would, but they didn't. They wouldn't let us put the well where we wanted to put the well. So we stopped meeting with them because you can't kick that can forever. So their compromise to us was to put a source of what they call potable water at the sewage plant, which is, of course, in South End where the Black community is. So you can get your water from there. You can get your clean water if you need it from the sewer plant. So we decided, you take that offer and you go your way. We're not ever going to accept that. So the update on the well now is that actually we're going to get our well. It's not going to be directly in the Black community, but it's going to be just on the edge of the Black community. We are partnering with Nova Scotia Community College, who has access to a piece of property who they are giving to the Black community to put that well on. And we'll have our well actually sometime probably before the summer's over. So that's the good update. The other update is that people are actually wanting to sit on our board. We had a fight to get people to come out for different things to attend meetings or whatever, but now people are actually saying, "Oh, I want to sit on the board of SEED. What do I have to do? Can I be a member?" Right? So that's a positive thing. People are thinking it's okay to speak up. People are actually saying, "Yeah, you're right. We've lost this one." Even Mr. Clyke is very, very. He was very eccentric, but he was everybody's favorite person in our community. He passed away last year with cancer. And the man that I talked about in the film with lung cancer, he passed away. And the other 9 people were other people in the community. So we're dying. My community, my Black community is dying. And it's dying because of environmental racism. The dump is finally closed, finally officially closed. But the update to that is they now want to go in there because we've brought attention to the issue. They now want to go in without consulting the community and do what they call a cleanup without anybody from the community having a say in how they do it. So we've hired student lawyers. We have the African Nova Scotian Black Law Students Association working with us, and they are making a difference. The council has refused to come to the table and sit down and talk to us about this. So it's another fight. And that's my update.
So the update on the Alton Gas project is that in 2021, they announced they're decommissioning the project. So it didn't get off the ground. And that was the win. After 7 years of, direct action, several of us, of our grandmothers and our young warriors that stood on the front line, that lived in that straw bale house, you've seen inside the gate, doing research. They are the ones that were filing the Freedom of Information, getting the documentation of what was done by the Environment Department of the Environment, and the breaking up their own laws, and the breach of our treaty rights as Mi'kmaq people. The criminalization of our people on that stand up for our rights as Indigenous people, just our rights to protect the land and to protect the water. Um, those are, I think, what when people were standing on the front lines, people came down to see what they could do, and it was people who came to the river were from the other side of the project. Non-native people in that little town of Brentwood, where the salt caverns were going in, they came to us and they said they're going to destroy our land. Where we live is like our little piece of paradise. We bought this land, we built our houses, and this is where we want to retire, this little beautiful little place. And I was like, yeah. They were saying, they're going to expropriate our land, and they're building bombs. They're putting these bombs underneath our land. These caverns are, as big as 10-story tall buildings, and they're a mile underground. And they're going to build not 3, as they were announcing, but in that Freedom of Information, we found out that there was 18 caverns that they were planning. And this was not a 10-year project. This was a 50-year project to store natural gas, fracked gas from the United States underneath the ground, which would also open up fracking in Nova Scotia. So while we're on the front lines and people are putting out the things that we're finding and actually photocopying them and bringing them to the Department of the Environment and saying, here, heads should roll with this information. Nothing was getting done. No heads rolled. As a matter of fact, the minister, Margaret Miller, was shuffled out of her position in cabinet into the Minister of Natural Resources during that time. And Ian Rankin came in as the Minister of the Environment. While we're going through the courts, the Indigenous people are going through the courts. At one point, I was sitting in the courtroom where the lawyer for the province of Nova Scotia said that they didn't need to consult with conquered peoples. And I was like, the most racist thing that was said in the Supreme Court of Nova Scotia, nothing was done. There was no objection except for me and other people that said, "Is somebody going to objection, I don't think you're allowed to say that." But they did. And I couldn't stay. It was just like I got physically assaulted in the gut. And I had to get up and walk out. We all kind of knew right then and there that this, we're up against more than a proponent. Any proponent. It could be anyone, like we said in the film. Any of those proponents, they still have the same impacts to our lands and our waters, our fish, the flyers, the swimmers, and our people, all the people that live there. So at that time, people came to us and they said, we don't have any rights, but you do. You have a treaty right. You should fight. You should get up there and fight. And then I said, sure, you're going to come with us, right? We'll do it together. So even though they came from different perspectives, our Indigenous perspective of Mother Earth, and this is our as a woman, it's our responsibility as life givers to protect, the life, the water. People were saying that this is our land. This is where we want to retire. We paid all this money and now they're going to take it away. Well, that's good enough. If that's what you want to fight for and you're fighting for the same thing, let's do it. So we build an alliance, and we have many people that came in to help us. And if it wasn't for every person that came with their good heart, good mind, their spirit, the water that's inside of them that wanted to fight, whatever they did, some were working as non-government, organizations, environmental organizations, students from every university. There was grassroots people, just mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers and people who cared, give a damn about the environment. And there was also people that didn't want to be known, but they were the ones that were doing the fundraising and research and sending things in and doing all the things that, I mean, they were unnamed. And if it wasn't for all of them coming together, we may not won this case. We may be still fighting this case. But I think Alton Gas found out, that it's this is not just the way they treat our Indigenous people, and it's not just the fight. All the non-Native people that were there too made a difference because they knew that they weren't going to be just walking over us; they were going to be walking over everyone, and that it wasn't going to happen. So I believe, even though it was Indigenous led, that it was meant for, it was at a good time. If it happened prior to, even years before, it might not have happened, ended the way it did. But with all the things that happened and Standing Rock was happening at the same time, you know, Wet'suwet'en, all these other places around Turtle Island where people, Indigenous people were standing up, and more non-Indigenous people were backing them up and coming, standing beside them, standing in front of them everywhere. That made a difference, and it still will today. So we have to do this together. You know, having them, we wanted them to take the pipe out of the ground, take that pipeline out, restore the land. Reclamation means to restore back to what it was. And they want to leave the pipe, and they're stating all these instances, where pipe has been left in the ground, even under Parliament Hill. Imagine, these lead pipes and all these things that were left there that they're still having problems with. They can't develop any places because of the instances where sinkholes can happen, and those things can happen, destruction to the land. We're saying take it out. The land will heal itself. It healed itself. The river healed itself within 3 months of standing there, stopping that. The 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 river healed itself. It grew over. It flowed over, and it just healed herself. And we said we just wanted them to know that we don't agree with what they say is reclamation. It should be consultation with the Indigenous people from Sabaganagati, and they should be the ones that are telling them what's acceptable for reclamation, not them telling us that this is all they want to do and this is how much they're willing to do. And we may be left with the bill to do that ourselves, because let's say take it or leave it, or maybe we won't do maybe we won't even do that. So that's I think that's the update I like to give. Thank you.
So much, Dorene, for sharing this update. And Ian, is there anything that you'd like to share also in terms of the update? Making the film before we open it up to folks not in the audience.
I mean, this is the update in a way, which is why I came here to HKS for this moment, really. So it's just remarkable for me to see you all again and together. And I've heard a lot of new things that I didn't know before. So yeah, I just think we made it quickly, and it did what it needed to do, I think, and we all felt super positive about that. At the same time, as I saw positive impacts in each case, there's still this ongoing fight and this ongoing struggle, and there's just not really space to heal. And I know that each of you is doing all they can to make space, but you have to keep fighting. So that's the frustration. You can do all these things, make these things, donate money, um, and you have to really think about policy, right? Because these are racist policies that are these are laws of the land that are completely destroying people's lives. And I think more and more you just see that white supremacy is killing everyone. And I think that to be, we're all complicit and we all have to take responsibility. And I just feel that so heavily when I'm here at this school and really trying to understand how policy is, because for me it was a humanitarian thing. I just care, so let's do the thing. And then you really start to see it's all built into the law, right? And so we need to work on that. We need to get new people in these positions of power to change the law. And then otherwise, it's just I am just so grateful. Excuse me, to be on the continued journey that we're on. Right? We didn't know we were going to be here together, but here we are. And we'll continue to do what we need to do. And I think just to reflect on this is Canada, and it's in a it was a case study in a way, but it's everywhere. It's nearby here. It's easily Google. You can Google. There's maps of every state, and probably near to where you live. That the same thing is happening. It's just sort of starting to surface as you see here. It's more and more in the conversation, and I think when we think about environmental racism, we're really that term is even broadening. It's about spatial violence, right? It's about gentrification, infrastructure issues, transportation problems, accessibility to green spaces and nature. It's a complex system of discrimination and violence toward the most marginalized, minoritized communities. And so I think that there will be tons of more storytelling that needs to happen in addition to the policies that need to change. And I think storytelling is really key in terms of, as Ingrid says, you have to connect the head to the heart to make these things happen. And politicians won't change anything unless they have some sort of empathy. And I'm learning here that empathy is hard, maybe for some politicians. But yeah, that's my update.
Thank you so much. It's been really incredible. And one of the things that I really enjoyed hearing about from you all is even just how you all connected through the documentary and how your struggles connected, how the sort of Black communities, Indigenous communities were kind of fighting separate battles. And yet, sort of the ways that Ian has laid out and the way that you all have laid out, these are all common and shared struggles, right? From Flint to Standing Rock to Jackson. These are really global, global struggles that repeat themselves far too often. And so we hope that you'll take the inspiration and the cue from these local incredible leaders to think about how we intervene and how we work to change those policies. I mean, it's going to be you guys making those policies in the future. So I really look forward to what you are gonna do to try to transform some of this stuff. So in the time that we have left, I would love to open it up for folks in the audience to share any thoughts or any reflections that you'd like to share with our guest speakers, or any questions that you have from them. If anything else that you'd like to know about their local struggles. Yes.
Yeah. So first, yeah, I can just speak up. Oh, okay. Thanks. Yeah. So first of all, Dorene, Louise, and Michelle, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your vulnerability and just expressing all the pain and impact of all of these communities. One of the themes that's run through is that a lot of times your elected officials let you down. They make all these promises, and then when it comes to it, they actually don't. And one of the things that you said, Louise, that I thought was very important is, if you don't care for your neighbor, then what do you stand for? Why you're around? So I guess my question is, have you as a community thought about new leadership? So having somebody in, like, for example, Michelle, like you running for office and having really a new representation, because a lot of the times, something that you said, Doreen, was really sad, that they assume that they don't need to consult with the conquered people. So there's a mentality that's there in the system. So have you, one, considered running for office and really having the power of the community and representing them because you understand better the pain? And two, have you considered a class action suit against the federal government? So not provincial level, but the federal government, because I know, Michelle, that they changed the law. But then, like, if you look at Louise, what they've done, if you look at the numbers of the death tolls, you have evidence that what they did wasn't right. So two questions, class action suit and running for office.
That's a good question because right now, myself, I have stepped up and I'm working with Canadian Human Rights Association and have filed a claim with Canadian Human Rights Association against the town of Shelburne for environmental racism, discrimination, and also for defamation of my character. This is in the process right now. I just finished the paperwork with myself and a very wonderful Black lawyer who helped me put that claim together. It is now in the hands of the Canadian Human Rights Association. As far as it goes to running for public office, no, thank you. My fight, I like the way I fight, as I fight honest, and I tell people, what I'm fighting for. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I don't trust politicians. I don't know what. I suppose I shouldn't say that, but I just did. Yeah. So as far as it goes to the claim, that was our next step. And people were saying, "Oh, I don't know if I can do it. If I can do it," I said, "Oh, I'm going to do it, and it's done." So yeah.
I'm with you. In the terms of I go out of my way not to take a photo with a politician. I am having worked so closely with the province of Nova Scotia for 5 years on this project. We're two very different people. And it's just yeah, like you have to be able to tell it like it is, and you have to be able to like with no strings and just to see in how all these backdoor deals and the what do they call it, the old guys club, and all these it's nothing I have a desire to be a part of. And in terms of, okay, well, maybe I can change, and have an influence on people. I've chosen a career path in Indigenous relations with companies and trying to get them to open up the dialogue with Indigenous peoples on development projects and on anything. Economic reconciliation is a big deal. Number 92 in the calls to action. That is what I am focused on right now, is doing it from the inside. And I don't see any value in preaching that myself.
If I could just say something, I have no desire, like I said, for politics, but I do have a desire to sit at those tables where they can hear me. And that's just what I'm doing. I'm sitting at the minister's environmental and climate change roundtable now, and my voice is very loud. I sit on all the committees that I can get on where it's going to make a difference in my community. So it's not politics. It's just a voice, a way of making people listen. So, but yeah.
No, I'm an activist. I can't be a politician at the same time. But I feel like our our voice is more powerful at the where we are than if I was in any kind of political. You wouldn't be able to say the truth, and you would only be able to say what you want to hear. And we just have to tell it like it is. And but we are, we are educating people about our history. It was erased from the, the history books, and it was erased from education, education institutions for generations. And now, those 15 plus children that were found, in Kamloops, BC, were the ones speaking about genocide in Canada. They're the ones that put that voice into our history today, to let people know that there is a lot that they don't know about the history of Indigenous peoples in Canada, the USA, around the world. So I think it's very important that we are free to be able to speak to that and to document, to write the curriculum. Didn't have to write anything. We came in and we spoke this curriculum today. That's more powerful than anything anybody could write and maybe put into a book for you. But ask the people, really, if you want to know about what's happening in these communities and the impacts, go to the communities and speak to the ones that are the impacted, and let them tell you what it feels like, how it's impacting, and ask you what you can help to do about it. What are you going to do about it? So I'm very thankful that we were blessed with this opportunity to come and speak, and thank you, Ian, for all the work that he did to listen to our stories. And when he came in, it was a whirlwind. It was happening so fast, and we thought it was just going to be a few stories that were going to be streamed on Elliot's page, her page, to talk about environmental racism in Nova Scotia, and to wake people up, to put our voice out there. And it ended up being, this platform, this movie that went around the world. So we were blessed, when we ask, we pray. And I'm going to say a prayer before uh, I'd like to share a little water teaching before we finish. But I wanted to just say, that prayer put out there, that intention was answered in all these ways that manifested. I really truly believe that. And we don't know how Creator's going to answer those prayers, but we know it's going to happen. And I believe that, the creation of this film was one of those ways that we're going to elevate our voice in our the things that were happening. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we're just out of time, but maybe if folks want to share sort of closing reflections or anything.
Yeah,
Dana,
I'll go
just-
quick.
Dana,
David, pass it up for me. Okay. Just want to quickly thank my aunt Louise and our compadres right there for such a wonderful presentation. But I want to use the word normalize. What you saw in that video was the real hometown that I come from. And I've had the privilege of living in a few other towns in Nova Scotia. But 80s, not a lot of people had cars, not a lot of people travel. We're a province with not a lot of resources, extra money to spend to go out and do things. So it was normal to me. It was normal to drink water that was gray with specks in it. It was normal
every few days or once a week, the sky would turn gray and there'd be sediment floating all around, and you knew not to put your clothes on the line that day. As I'm sure for Michelle, it was normal, that little, you know, that brook with all that pollution in it. That was probably normal because that's all she knew. I didn't realize in the town of Shelburne that it was not normal until I moved out of there. And I was like, oh my God, this is good water. You know, this is before bottled water even. So, you know, if you're looking back in time, how can you fight against something when you don't know that it's wrong? And thank you for, you know, social media and whatever, the news and word gets around that, you know, things could be better. So thank you to the three of you.
I know we've run out of time, so I'll keep it very short and quick. I think thank you for your leadership and courage and stewardship to kind of stand against these systems of oppression and pain, which take away our lands, our air, our water. So really grateful to you for that. We of course saw the story playing out in Canada. I come from India. I come from a very different part of the world. And these stories spoke to me because these stories are happening back home in India. They happen every day. I was part of a few movements to fight them. The system is taking away our lands on an everyday basis. Uh, I had two questions, but one last question, if I could hear from you, would be as future policymakers, leaders of organizations, governments, what can we do tomorrow in solidarity, in support, to really recognize, honor, respect Indigenous cultures, languages, rights, and celebrate them instead of dismantling them and destroying them and walking all over them as we are seeing all around us. So, any quick thoughts? And thank you so much once again.
For everybody that's even here tonight, this is one of the first steps. If you haven't taken any step at all, if you feel like you haven't taken any step, just being here, educating yourself, and you're in these programs that really stimulate this, I guess, this spirit of social justice and environmental justice. And so one of the questions that you asked is, what does justice look like? We don't have the answer. We want to get to the answer, but we need you guys to also help us get to the answer. So when it comes to, you know, calls to action and what can you do, I know that, you know, this is the USA and we're in Canada, but keep eyes on us. We definitely resonate with a lot of things that are happening here in the USA as well. I went to the Cody International Institute, and I had been in a cohort with a lot of students from India. It was an international, and I remember telling them about my story way before the storytelling. The storytelling happened, you know, was happening a long time ago, and I remember them saying, "Oh my goodness, you know, wow, this happens here too," you know. And I think that those little sparks and those conversations and those keep carrying it and carry it on and tell and retell a story, and just in the spirit of storytelling and sharing, I think everybody will come together and continue that. It's not necessarily, you know, a big grandiose action that needs to happen. Yeah.
Okay, when it comes to policy. Oh, that's a good one. In the words of Dorene, water is life. Okay. And when you think about environment and climate change, water is going to be very, very important to us. And water is important to us today, not going to be, it is. The group that I coordinated, SEED, we've gone through the Black community and put in new wells for people. We've put in water filtration systems. We've put in filtration systems on taps because the water in our community was not town potable water. The water that we have comes from wells, and the town water comes from the lake, which is just behind the Black community, bypasses the Black community, the town water, and we were left to fend for ourselves to have clean water. One policy, or how policy could help, is that situations like that are not ever to happen, again. That it needs to be, people need to be very conscious when they're making policies about where clean water is. Everybody should have the right to clean water. And that's a policy that doesn't exist. So when you talk policy, that's one. That's an important one that, that could be put in place and maybe save some lives.
Mm. And clean water should be a human right.
Yeah.
Access to clean water. When we well, I would say policy it should be that the environment has rights. The environment should have rights like human beings do, because we all need a clean environment to survive. We all need clean water to survive. Without rights to the environment, it takes away our inherent right, our human right to clean water, clean land, clean air. So that's where the policies has to change. And those policies that protect our environment are going to protect every living species that depends on that clean environment to live. Yeah. So I just wanted to share a little teaching on the water. So let's just say this is clean water. So this water ceremony came from Bidasige, the late grandmother Josephine Mandamin, who was the elder who walked around the Great Lakes with a pail of water from each of the Great Lakes, praying for the health of this water, for the healing of this water. And she did this over 7 years. And then she organized walks with women to raise up the sacredness of water and how connected we are to the water. So each of us were carried in the womb of your mother, surrounded by water. That water, that was the time where you could breathe the water, drink the water. You become the water. You are over 70% water when you come into this world. And when you come into this world, you come through the water. And you bring that spirit of the water inside of you when you come into this physical world. What she says is that the people have forgotten their relationship to the water. They forgot. They don't even know where your water comes from. And she said we need people to start to have relationship with the water. So I'll teach you one way. So with this glass of water, in the morning when you wake up, you put this water beside you, and this water can connect to the water that's inside of you, and it represents the water that comes down from the sky, that's under the ground, that's on the surface. And you have relationship with the water. You tell the water, the water can hear you, can see you, can feel you, it knows you. And in the morning, it hears your dreams, it knows your worries. When you pick up this water in the morning, tell the water, I love you. Tell the water, I thank you. Tell the water, I respect you. Because once you do that, then you can take your tobacco or we use tobacco as an offering, but you could use cornmeal, something to give to the Mother Earth to say, thank you for this water. And ask the water to be your medicine. Go to your mind, your body, your spirit, your emotions, wherever you need that help and that healing and that energy for you to walk in a good way just for today. And once you make your offering, you can drink that water as your medicine. Start your day. Telling the water, I love you, I thank you, I respect you. In our language, we say, Samguan desalo, Samguan walawan, Samguan get me deal, Samguan not me majawaan. Water is life. The song that we were taught comes from Anishinaabe grandmothers that walked around those great lakes and woke people up about the condition of the water on Mother Earth. And today we still carry that water. We still do those water walks and raise awareness about the water, the condition of the water, and our relationship to the water and our responsibility to the water. So that's what I wanted to share with you tonight before we leave. And it's not very hard to tell the water. Without water, nothing can live. Tell the water, I love you. I'll sing the song for you. Close this today. And it's sung in Anishinaabe because that's where the song originated. And then we were told that we could put it in our language, any language. And the ancestors will hear you. Nibe kisage iku chimi kwechuine miku kishawane miku. And in Mi'kmaq, Samguan Gesalu, Samguan Welale, Samguan Get Me Delmo, Samguan Not Me Majuan. Water is life. Walalan, thank you.